Miss Johnson, that hillbilly accent is completely inappropriate for this academic setting. Professor David Whitmore's voice dripped with disgust as he stared down at 11-year-old Maya Johnson. Perhaps you should consider whether you truly belong in Harvard's Young Scholars program. Maya's small hand dropped to her desk. 20 elite students snickered. The professor's $3,000 suit gleamed under the lights as he towered over the scholarship kid from rural Alabama. Sir, I was just trying to answer your question about linguistics? Really? His laugh was cruel and cold. A child who speaks like she crawled out of a trailer park is going to teach us about proper language? How absolutely precious. The mahogany-paneled room erupted in whispers. Maya's second-hand clothes suddenly felt like armor made of paper. Her scholarship letter crumpled in her sweaty palm. But Professor Whitmore had just made the biggest mistake of his career. What happens when you underestimate the wrong child? Maya's hands stopped shaking. Something shifted in her dark eyes. The whispers around her faded to nothing. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the polished floor. Every head in the room turned toward her. Professor Whitmore's smirk faltered for just a moment. Professor. Maya's voice was steady now, cutting through the tension like a knife. You want to discuss linguistics and proper language? The room held its breath. I'd be happy to respond to your observations. Would you prefer I do so in French, Spanish? Perhaps German would be more appropriate for such a distinguished scholar? Her Alabama drawl had vanished, replaced by something else entirely. Something that made the professor's confident expression crack. Excuse me? Whitmore's voice climbed higher. Maya took a small step forward. Or maybe Russian would impress you more? I could switch to Mandarin if you'd find that more academically rigorous. Though I suspect Arabic might really demonstrate the depth you're looking for. The students leaned forward in their seats. Phones started appearing from under desks. Professor Whitmore's face had gone pale. What exactly are you trying to... Italian, Japanese, Portuguese? Maya's voice grew stronger with each language. You mentioned my personal experience with speech patterns was limited. I'm curious which of these you'd consider most suitable for serious academic discourse. The professor's leather briefcase slipped slightly in his grip. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Maya smiled for the first time since entering the room. It wasn't a child's smile anymore. It was the smile of someone who had just revealed their hand in a poker game. Or should I stick with English, since that seems to be the only language you understand? The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. 20 11-year-olds stared in amazement. The Harvard professor who had seemed so powerful moments before now looked small and confused. Maya Johnson was no longer the scared scholarship kid from Alabama. She was something else entirely, and this was just the beginning. Maya began to speak, and the world shifted. Good afternoon, Professor Whitmore. I'd like to discuss the linguistic nuances you seem to be ignoring. Her French flowed like silk, each word perfectly pronounced with a Parisian accent that would make natives weep. The professor's jaw dropped. Students scrambled for their phones. Without missing a beat, Maya switched to Spanish. Hello, class. Did you know Spanish has over 400 million native speakers? It's fascinating how some academics ignore this cultural richness. Her Spanish rolled off her tongue with the rhythm of poetry. Not textbook Spanish, real Spanish, with the subtle inflections of someone who understood the soul of the language. Maya shifted to German. Good day, everyone. I'd like to talk about the complexity of the German language. It's interesting how prejudice can interfere with academic discussion. Her German was crisp, authoritative. Professor Whitmore stumbled backward. His expensive briefcase hit the floor with a thud. Maya's eyes sparkled as she continued in Russian. Hello, dear students. Allow me to tell you about the beauty of the Russian language. Her Russian was flawless, flowing with the deep resonance of Moscow winters. The classroom had transformed into something magical. 20 11-year-olds sat transfixed, watching their quiet classmate become someone extraordinary. Maya switched to Mandarin, her voice carrying the tonal precision of a Beijing scholar. Hello, my friends. Chinese is one of the world's most beautiful languages. It's unfortunate that some people choose to ignore its value. She turned to face Professor Whitmore directly. His face had gone from pale to green. Her Arabic flowed like sand through fingers, each syllable perfectly formed. Welcome, my dear friends. Ignorance is no excuse for academic bias. The scent of possibility filled the air. Maya's grandmother had always told her that knowledge was the one thing nobody could steal. Now she understood what that meant. Maya's Italian danced through the room like music. Hello, beautiful class. It's incredible how stupidity can hide behind impressive academic titles. Some students started to smile. They didn't understand every word, but they felt the power behind them. Her Japanese carried the respect and precision of ancient traditions. Hello, dear friends. The beauty of language comes not from the speaker's origin, but from the depth of their heart. Professor Whitmore tried to speak, but only managed a strangled sound. Maya saved the best for last, her Portuguese singing with the warmth of Brazilian beaches and Portuguese mountains. Hello, dear colleagues. It's a shame that some professors confuse accent with intelligence. The room erupted. Students jumped to their feet, applauding. Phones recorded every second. The quiet scholarship girl had just performed linguistic magic that would be talked about for years. Maya returned to English, her Alabama drawl sliding back into place like a comfortable coat. You see, Professor Whitmore, I reckon my personal experience with speech patterns might be a little broader than you assumed. The Harvard professor stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. His perfectly pressed suit suddenly looked ridiculous. His confident smirk had melted into bewildered shock. I've been studying languages since I was 7, Maya continued, her voice gentle but firm. Started with Spanish cartoons when Mama worked double shifts. Moved on to French cooking shows, German documentaries, Russian literature online. She picked up her worn notebook, the one that contained years of careful study. You know what I learned? Smart doesn't have an accent, it just needs a chance to speak. The applause grew louder. Students who had never spoken to Maya before looked at her with wonder and respect. Professor Whitmore finally found his voice. How did you? Maya smiled, and for the first time all day it reached her eyes. Professor, you just taught this entire class something very important. You showed them what happens when you judge a book by its cover. The afternoon sun seemed brighter now, streaming through those tall windows like a spotlight on greatness. But Maya wasn't finished. She had spent 4 years preparing for this moment. 4 years of late nights and early mornings while her parents worked double shifts. 4 years of believing that someday someone would see her for who she really was. Today was that day. Maya Johnson had just changed everything. And the best part? This was only the beginning of her story. 4 years earlier, 7-year-old Maya sat on the cracked linoleum floor of their tiny Alabama apartment. The smell of her mother's morning coffee mixed with the sound of medical equipment beeping through the thin walls next door. Her mama, still in scrubs from her night shift at the hospital, collapsed into their second-hand couch. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Her hands shook from exhaustion. Baby, Mama's got to sleep a few hours before Daddy gets home from his cleaning job, she whispered. You are good now. Maya nodded, clutching the old tablet her mama had found at a yard sale. The screen was cracked, but it worked. And on that broken tablet, Maya discovered something magical. Spanish cartoons played on a free app. The colorful characters spoke in musical voices that made Maya giggle. She didn't understand the words, but something deep inside her wanted to. By age 8, Maya had moved on to French cooking shows during her mama's hospital visits. She would sit in the waiting room, earbuds in, watching chefs create beautiful dishes while speaking in flowing, elegant sentences. The public library became her sanctuary. Miss Henderson, the kind librarian, let Maya check out adult language books even though she was just a child. Knowledge has no age limit, sweetheart, she would say. Maya learned German from documentaries about castles, Russian from online poetry readings, Mandarin from children's shows that taught counting and colors. But it was during one hospital visit that everything changed. Maya watched her mama struggle to help a scared elderly patient who spoke only Korean. The woman was crying, alone, unable to explain her pain. Maya's mama looked helpless, frustrated. The translator wouldn't arrive for hours. That night, Maya made a promise to herself. She would learn every language she could. No one should ever feel alone because words built walls instead of bridges. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory during those late study sessions. Baby girl, Learning is the one thing nobody can take from you. Not poverty, not prejudice, not nothing. Maya studied while her parents worked double shifts. She learned while other kids played video games. She practiced pronunciation in the mirror while her friends watched cartoons. Knowledge became her superpower, and today she finally found her chance to use it. 2 weeks later, Riverside Academy's gymnasium buzzed with excitement. Colorful flags hung from the rafters. The smell of international foods filled the air. Parents and families gathered for the annual International Family Night. Maya walked through the crowd, still adjusting to her new reality. Since her classroom demonstration, everything has changed. Students who once ignored her now waved in the hallways. Teachers smiled when they saw her coming. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like a test. Miss Rodriguez found Maya near the Korean booth, where a family had set up traditional decorations. "Maya, honey, we have a small problem." An elderly Korean woman sat alone at a table, looking lost and sad. Her family bustled around, preparing food displays, but she remained isolated. Her eyes held the familiar look of someone trapped behind a language barrier. "Mrs. Park speaks only Korean," Miss Rodriguez explained. "Our translator canceled at the last minute. The family is so disappointed. Grandmother wanted to share her kimchi recipe stories, but—" Maya's heart squeezed. She saw her own mother in that lonely figure. "I've been studying Korean for about 6 months," she said quietly. "I'm not perfect, but maybe I could try." Miss Rodriguez's eyes lit up. "Would you?" Maya approached the elderly woman slowly, her palms sweating. 6 months of online lessons suddenly felt like nothing. What if she embarrassed herself? What if she couldn't help? She bowed respectfully, the way she'd learned from Korean culture videos. "Hello, grandmother," she said in careful Korean. "My name is Maya." Mrs. Park's face transformed. Her eyes widened, then crinkled with joy. She reached out and patted Maya's hand, speaking rapidly in Korean. Maya caught fragments. Something about loneliness, something about kindness, something about missing home. "You miss Korea?" Maya asked in Korean, her pronunciation careful but sincere. Mrs. Park nodded vigorously. Then she began to speak, slowly this time, about her childhood, about the garden where she learned to make kimchi, about the recipes passed down through generations. Maya translated bits and pieces for the growing crowd, not perfectly but with heart. The cultural bridge she was building wasn't made of flawless grammar. It was made of respect, patience, and genuine care. Other families began to gather. They watched this 11-year-old girl create a connection where none had existed before. Mrs. Park stood up and disappeared behind the booth. She returned with a small jar of kimchi and a folded piece of paper covered in Korean writing. She pressed both into Maya's hands, speaking in Korean with tears in her eyes. "She says," Maya translated, her own voice thick with emotion, "that kindness speaks every language, and she wants me to have her grandmother's kimchi recipe." The crowd applauded. Parents wiped their eyes. Children stared in wonder at this small girl who had just performed magic. But Maya barely heard the applause. She was focused on Mrs. Park's weathered hands holding hers, on the gratitude shining in the elderly woman's eyes, on the proof that her 4 years of secret studying had just created something beautiful. From across the gymnasium, she spotted a familiar figure. Professor Whitmore stood near the entrance, his grandson's hand in his. He was watching everything unfold with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. Their eyes met across the crowded room. For the first time, he didn't look away in dismissal. He looked thoughtful. Maya tucked the precious kimchi recipe into her pocket and smiled. One bridge was built, she thought. Many more to go. The Monday morning after International Family Night, everything felt different at Riverside Academy, but not in the way Maya had hoped. She walked through the hallways carrying Mrs. Park's kimchi recipe in her backpack like a talisman. Students still stared, but now their whispers carried a sharper edge. "My mom says it's not normal for a kid to know that many languages," she heard one girl mutter to her friend. Maya's steps slowed. Not normal? The first blow came during lunch. Maya approached her usual table where Jessica and Hannah always sat, but today the seats were suddenly saved. "Sorry, Maya," Jessica said without meeting her eyes. "These spots are taken. Maya clutched her lunch tray tighter. But we always sit together. My parents think... Hannah started, then stopped. Maybe you should sit somewhere else today. Maya found herself alone at a corner table, Mrs. Park's kindness feeling very far away. The second blow came harder. During afternoon assembly, Principal Davidson stood at the podium looking uncomfortable. The school board has asked me to address some concerns raised by parents, he announced. There have been questions about our academic standards and whether all students in advanced programs have been properly evaluated. Maya's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what properly evaluated meant. The whispers grew louder. Are we sure she's not just memorizing phrases? How do we know it's real? Maybe she's been coached. By Thursday, the isolation felt complete. Teachers smiled nervously when they saw her. Parents pulled their children closer in the pickup line. Even some faculty members began treating her differently. Maya started eating lunch in the library, started walking home alone instead of with friends, started wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe she was just a fraud. The breaking point came Friday afternoon. Maya overheard a conversation outside the principal's office. I'm not comfortable with my child being in the same advanced program as, well, you understand. The voice belonged to Mrs. Wellington, president of the parent committee. The child seems bright enough, Principal Davidson replied carefully. Bright or coached, there's a difference. I think we need formal testing, real evaluation, before she makes our entire program look questionable. Maya pressed her back against the wall, her heart hammering. They wanted to test her, to prove she was fake. Professor Whitmore's voice joined the conversation. I agree. We need to maintain academic integrity. The words hit Maya like physical blows. Academic integrity, as if her 4 years of passionate learning were somehow dishonest. That night, Maya sat on her bedroom floor surrounded by her language books. Her cracked tablet played a Korean lullaby Mrs. Park had taught her. But instead of comfort, she felt only doubt. Maybe they were right. Maybe a girl like her didn't belong in their world of privilege and perfection. Maybe her grandmother was wrong about learning something nobody could take away, because it felt like they were taking it away right now. Maya reached for her phone to call her grandmother, then stopped. What would she say? That the smart kid's parents thought she was a liar? That being extraordinary while poor and black made people suspicious? Instead, she pulled out Mrs. Park's kimchi recipe. The Korean characters looked beautiful but foreign. Had she really understood their conversation? Or had she just been pretending? For the first time in 4 years, Maya Johnson doubted herself. And that doubt felt like drowning. The scared little girl from Alabama was back, and this time she wasn't sure she was strong enough to fight. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. Maya sat in the back seat of Miss Rodriguez's car, staring out the window at the university campus looming ahead. The regional young linguists' competition banners fluttered in the autumn wind. You don't have to do this, Miss Rodriguez said gently, catching Maya's eyes in the rearview mirror. We can turn around right now. Maya shook her head. No, I need to know. She needed to know if she was real, if her 4 years of learning meant anything, if Mrs. Park's tears and gratitude had been based on truth or illusion. The university auditorium buzzed with nervous energy. 43 contestants from across the region checked in with their coaches. Maya counted at least 12 kids from elite private schools, designer clothes, professional tutors hovering nearby, parents with expensive cameras. Maya wore her best thrift store dress and carried her worn backpack. Contestant 44, Maya Johnson, Riverside Academy, the registration volunteer called out. Heads turned. Whispers started immediately. She's so young. Which private school is that? Where's her coach? Maya walked to the contestant table alone. At 11, she was clearly the youngest participant. Most competitors looked 15 or 16. The first round began with rapid-fire translation challenges, English to Spanish medical terminology. Maya's hand shot up first. The cardiovascular system includes arteries, veins, and capillaries, she answered in perfect Spanish, her pronunciation crisp and confident. The judges nodded approvingly. Other contestants glanced her way with new attention. Round 2 escalated. Mandarin to French cultural concepts. A 17-year-old from Boston Academy stumbled through an answer about traditional festivals. Maya raised her hand. Her Mandarin flowed like water as she explained the cultural significance, then transitioned seamlessly into French with the emotional nuance intact. The auditorium grew quieter. Phones appeared as parents began recording this small girl who spoke like a seasoned diplomat. Round 3 brought Arabic to German technical terms. The competition favorite, a 16-year-old from Phillips Exeter, attempted the translation but missed critical grammatical structures. Maya's Arabic carried the rhythm of poetry. Her German was precise, authoritative. She explained not just the words but the cultural context behind technical innovations. Judge Dr. Carter leaned forward. "Contestant 44, how long have you been studying Arabic?" "2 years, ma'am. Self-taught from online resources and library materials." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Self-taught? The surprise round changed everything. Contestants had to teach a phrase to the judges in any language of their choice. Maya stood at the microphone, suddenly thinking of Mrs. Park's gentle hands and kind eyes. "I'd like to teach you a Korean phrase," she said. "It means, kindness speaks every language." She demonstrated the pronunciation slowly, explaining the cultural weight behind each syllable, how respect was built into the grammar itself, how age and relationship shaped the words you chose. As the judges repeated the phrase, their faces softened. This wasn't just language learning, this was cultural bridge building. When Maya finished, the auditorium erupted in spontaneous applause, not polite competition clapping, real, sustained applause. Judge Dr. Martinez stood up. "In 15 years of judging this competition, I've never seen such an intuitive understanding of cross-cultural communication." Maya's eyes found Miss Rodriguez in the audience. Her teacher was crying, hands pressed to her heart. But more importantly, Maya felt something click back into place inside herself. The doubt that had been eating at her for weeks began to dissolve. She was real, her learning was real, her gift was real, and they couldn't take that away from her. Miss Rodriguez's classroom felt different on Monday afternoon, softer somehow, warmed by the golden light filtering through autumn leaves outside. Maya sat in the reading corner, still clutching her regional competition certificate. "Third place overall," Miss Rodriguez said, settling into the chair beside her. "Youngest competitor in the history of the event. The judges were blown away." Maya managed a small smile. It felt good to prove I wasn't making it all up. "Oh, honey," Miss Rodriguez's voice carried the weight of her own memories. "I know exactly how you feel." She pulled out an old photograph from her desk drawer. A young Latina girl stood in front of a classroom, looking scared and out of place. "That's me, first day of graduate school, 24 years old, first in my family to go to college. My professor told me my accent made me sound unprofessional, said I might want to consider a different career path." Maya looked up, surprised. Miss Rodriguez had never shared this before. "I went home and cried for 3 hours. Then I got angry. Then I got determined." Miss Rodriguez smiled. "Sounds familiar?" Maya nodded, feeling less alone than she had in weeks. "Which is why I'm nominating you for the National Young Linguist Fellowship." Miss Rodriguez pulled out an official form on university letterhead. "Full scholarship to the summer intensive program at Georgetown. You'd be the youngest participant ever accepted." Maya's breath caught. "But what about the parents? The school board? They still think They think you're extraordinary, which terrifies them." Miss Rodriguez began filling out the form with her personal fountain pen. "But Principal Davidson called me this morning. The school board voted unanimously to support your application." "They did?" "Apparently Dr. Carter from the competition committee called them personally. Said your performance was unprecedented in her 30-year career. That got their attention." Maya watched her teacher's elegant handwriting flow across the recommendation letter. Each word felt like armor against the doubt that had been crushing her. "There's something else," Miss Rodriguez continued. "Professor Whitmore requested a meeting with me." Maya's stomach tightened. To complain about the competition? To apologize, and to ask if he could write a supplemental recommendation letter. The words hung in the air like impossible magic. "Professor Whitmore wants to help me?" He said, "Watching you at the International Family Night opened his eyes. Seeing you build bridges instead of walls. He realized he'd been part of the problem." Miss Rodriguez signed her name with a flourish. Sometimes adults need children to teach them how to be better humans. Maya thought about Mrs. Park's weathered hands, about the Korean lullaby she now hummed while studying, about the way language had become her superpower instead of her burden. "Will you accept his recommendation?" Miss Rodriguez asked gently. Maya considered this. The professor who had tried to silence her voice now wanted to amplify it. The man who had dismissed her was ready to champion her. "Yes," she said quietly. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow." Miss Rodriguez sealed the envelope with Maya's future inside. "That's why you're going to change the world, Maya Johnson. Not just because you speak 9 languages, but because you speak the most important one of all." "Which one?" "Forgiveness." Monday morning brought a new face to Riverside Academy. Maya spotted her immediately in the hallway outside the main office. A girl about her age, clutching a schedule with white knuckles, eyes wide with the terror of being lost. The girl's hijab was perfectly arranged, but her hands shook as she tried to read the room numbers. Maya recognized that look. She'd worn it herself not so long ago. Maya approached slowly, the way she'd learned to approach Mrs. Park. Gentle, respectful, safe. "Are you looking for Miss Rodriguez's classroom?" Maya asked softly. The girl turned, relief flooding her face when she saw Maya's kind smile. But when she opened her mouth to respond, only Arabic came out, fast, panicked Arabic that spoke of confusion and fear. Maya's heart squeezed with recognition. Without hesitation, she responded in Arabic, her voice calm and reassuring. "Don't worry, I can help you. My name is Maya." The girl's eyes widened in amazement. "You speak Arabic? But you're different than you expected?" Maya finished with a gentle laugh. "I get that a lot. What's your name?" "Amara. My family just moved here from Syria. I'm so scared. Everyone speaks so fast and I don't understand anything." Maya took Amara's schedule and quickly mapped out her day. In Arabic, she explained where each classroom was located, which teachers were patient with English learners, and where the best spots were to eat lunch. "The cafeteria can be overwhelming," Maya said, switching back to English to help Amara practice. "Want to sit with me today?" Other students began to gather, drawn by the sound of Arabic flowing through their familiar hallways. But instead of staring with suspicion, they looked curious, interested. "Maya speaks like 9 languages," whispered Tyler, one of her classmates. "She's famous." Famous. Maya still couldn't get used to that word. At lunch, Maya created something beautiful without even realizing it. She introduced Amara to Jessica and Hannah, who had quietly returned to Maya's table after the competition results made the local news. "Can you teach us some Arabic words?" Jessica asked shyly. Soon their corner of the cafeteria buzzed with attempts at pronunciation. Amara giggled as the other kids stumbled over simple greetings. Maya translated, encouraged, and built bridges with every word. From across the cafeteria, Professor Whitmore's grandson Tommy watched it all unfold. That evening, he would tell his grandfather about Maya's kindness, about how she made the scared new girl feel welcome, about how she turned difference into celebration instead of division. But Maya didn't know about any of that yet. She was too busy discovering that her greatest superpower wasn't speaking 9 languages. It was helping others find their voice. 3 months later, Maya stood in the marble lobby of the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., the National Young Linguist Championship banner stretched across the grand entrance. Camera crews adjusted their equipment. This wasn't just a competition anymore. It was a nationally televised event. Maya's parents flanked her, their work uniforms traded for their Sunday best. Her mother's nurse badge was nowhere to be seen. Her father had taken his first unpaid day off in 2 years. "You don't have to do this, baby girl," her mama whispered, smoothing Maya's collar with trembling hands. But Maya did have to do this. For Mrs. Park, for Amara, for every kid who'd ever been told they didn't belong. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy. 52 contestants from across the nation. Maya, at 12 now, remained the youngest by 3 years. The competition had drawn international attention after her regional performance went viral online. Dr. Sarah Carter, the head judge, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most challenging linguistic competition in North America. Today's format will test not just language skills, but cultural intelligence and real-world application." Maya's stomach fluttered as she took her place at Station 47. Around her, teenagers from elite prep schools whispered final strategy notes to their professional coaches. Maya had Miss Rodriguez in the audience and a heart full of determination. "Round 1 begins now," Dr. Carter announced. "Speed translation. You have 90 seconds per language pair." The electronic board flashed. English to Mandarin. Medical emergency protocols. Maya's hand shot up first. Her Mandarin flowed like water as she translated complex medical terminology. Each tone perfect, each nuance preserved. The judges nodded approvingly. Spanish to Russian. Economic policy analysis. Maya switched gears seamlessly, her Russian carrying the authority of someone who understood both languages' souls. French to Arabic. Environmental science research. Her Arabic danced through technical terms while maintaining the poetic rhythm that made the language beautiful. After 6 rapid-fire rounds, only 12 contestants remained, Maya among them. "Round 2, Dr. Carter continued. Cultural interpretation. Explain concepts that have no direct translation. The Portuguese concept of saudade, a deep emotional state of nostalgic longing. Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her grandmother's voice on scratchy phone calls. Saudade isn't just missing someone, she explained in English. It's the bittersweet ache of loving something so much that its absence becomes part of who you are. It's what my grandmother feels for the South Carolina farm where she was born, even though she's never going back. The judges leaned forward. This wasn't textbook knowledge. This was a lived understanding. Japanese ikigai, life's purpose. Korean han, collective sorrow. German fernweh, wanderlust for places you've never been. Maya explained each with the wisdom of someone who'd spent years not just learning languages, but living inside them. 5 contestants remained. Final round, Dr. Carter announced. Crisis simulation. You are United Nations youth interpreters. A heated debate has erupted between young climate activists from different countries. Communication has broken down. You have 30 minutes to restore dialogue and reach consensus. Maya's pulse quickened. This was it. Everything she'd prepared for. 5 delegates took the stage, teenagers fluent in French, Arabic, Mandarin, German, and Portuguese. They began arguing passionately about carbon emissions, each speaking only in their native tongue. The French delegate shouted about industrial responsibility. The Arabic speaker countered with developing nation rights. The Mandarin speaker demanded immediate action. The German delegate cited economic impacts. The Portuguese speaker pleaded for small island nations facing extinction. Chaos erupted. Voices rose. Understanding crumbled. Maya stepped forward. She began in French, acknowledging the industrial nation's historical responsibility while validating concerns about economic transition. She switched to Arabic, honoring the developing world's right to growth while emphasizing shared planetary stewardship. Her Mandarin carried urgency without dismissing practical constraints. Her German balanced economic realities with moral imperatives. Her Portuguese brought tears to eyes as she spoke of families losing their homelands to rising seas. But the breakthrough came when Maya did something unexpected. She found the common thread, not in policies or politics, but in shared human experience. We all love someone, she said, switching between languages so each delegate heard their mother tongue. We all have grandparents who tell stories of how the world used to be. We all dream of children who will inherit what we leave behind. She spoke of her grandmother's farm in Alabama. The Arabic delegate shared memories of his grandfather's olive groves. The French speaker described her great-grandmother's vineyard. The German delegate talked about family forests. The Portuguese speaker wept for his island-born mother. Language became music. Stories became bridges. Differences became strength. In 28 minutes, 5 angry teenagers had become allies with a unified climate action plan. The auditorium sat in stunned silence. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone was standing, applauding, wiping tears. Maya looked into the audience and found her parents crying with pride. Miss Rodriguez held her hand over her heart. In the back row, Professor Whitmore stood with tears streaming down his face. Dr. Carter approached the microphone, her voice thick with emotion. In 30 years of judging linguistic competitions, I have never witnessed anything like what just occurred. This young woman didn't just translate languages, she translated hearts. The other four contestants surrounded Maya, speaking in rapid bursts of gratitude and amazement. The judges huddled in intense discussion. Maya's legs felt weak, her voice was hoarse. But something deep inside her chest glowed like a star. She had done more than win a competition. She had proven that a girl from rural Alabama could stand on the world stage and build bridges where others saw only walls. When Dr. Carter returned to announce the results, Maya already knew she had won something more valuable than any trophy. She had found her calling. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Carter's voice rang through the Kennedy Center, "this year's National Young Linguist Champion with a unanimous decision from the judges, Maya Johnson of Riverside Academy." The auditorium erupted. Maya's parents rushed the stage. Miss Rodriguez sobbed in the audience. Camera flashes exploded like stars. But all Maya could think about was Mrs. Park's weathered hands and the Korean lullaby that had taught her kindness speaks every language. She had come so far from that scared 11-year-old in Professor Whitmore's classroom. And this was still just the beginning. The crystal trophy felt surprisingly heavy in Maya's 12-year-old hands. Etched into its surface were the words, "Future Bridge Builder," in 9 different languages. The same 9 languages that had carried her from shame to triumph. "Maya Johnson," Dr. Carter announced to the packed Kennedy Center auditorium, "you are the youngest National Young Linguist Champion in the competition's 40-year history." Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. The national news crews that had come to document the event now had their headline story. Social media feeds flooded with videos of the small black girl from Alabama who had just redefined what excellence looked like. But Maya barely noticed the media frenzy. Her eyes searched the audience until she found them, her parents, holding each other and crying harder than she'd ever seen them cry. Her mama still wore the small cross necklace she'd put on for luck that morning. Her daddy's calloused hands shook as he applauded. "Miss Johnson," a reporter called out, microphone extended, "how does it feel to make history?" Maya thought about the question carefully. How did it feel? It felt like justice, like vindication, like every late night studying while her parents worked double shifts had been worth it. "It feels like coming home," she said simply. "I've spent so long trying to prove I belong somewhere. Today I realized I belong everywhere. Languages can build bridges." The crowd erupted in fresh applause. Behind the cameras, Maya spotted a familiar figure making his way toward the stage. Professor Whitmore looked older somehow, humbler. His expensive suit remained perfectly pressed, but something fundamental had changed in his bearing. He no longer carried himself like a man who owned every room he entered. He waited patiently as reporters finished their interviews, as photographers captured their shots, as the trophy presentation concluded. When the stage finally cleared, he approached Maya with careful steps. "Miss Johnson," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Might I have a moment?" Maya nodded, curious but unafraid. She was no longer the scared scholarship kid he could intimidate. "I owe you an apology," Professor Whitmore began. "Not just for my words in that classroom months ago, but for everything my words represented, for a lifetime of assumptions about who deserves to be heard." He paused, struggling with something that clearly didn't come easily to him. "My grandson Tommy talks about you constantly, about how you help the new Syrian girl, how you make everyone feel included, how you turn differences into celebrations instead of divisions." His voice cracked slightly. "He asked me why I was so mean to the nicest kid in his grade." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Not triumph or satisfaction, but something gentler, sadder, understanding. "Children see the world more clearly than adults sometimes," Professor Whitmore continued. "They haven't learned to build walls yet. You reminded me of that. You reminded me of who I used to be before I let prejudice make me small." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out an official Harvard University letterhead. "I've written a recommendation for your Georgetown Fellowship application, but more than that, I've spoken with colleagues about creating a new program, the Maya Johnson Initiative for Young Linguistic Scholars. Full scholarships for underrepresented students who show exceptional language aptitude." Maya's breath caught. "You want to name a program after me? I want to make sure no other child faces what you faced. I want to turn my mistake into something that makes the world better." Before Maya could respond, Miss Rodriguez appeared beside them, followed by her parents and a growing crowd of supporters. "There's more news," Miss Rodriguez announced, her eyes shining with tears of pride. "The Today Show wants Maya for a live interview tomorrow morning. The Smithsonian has requested her to speak at their International Education Summit, and Georgetown University is offering her their youngest ever summer fellowship." Maya's mother gasped. "The Today Show? Our Maya?" "Our Maya," her father repeated, voice thick with wonder. "Our baby girl." But the most meaningful moment came when an unexpected figure pushed through the crowd. Mrs. Park, the elderly Korean grandmother from International Family Night, shuffled forward with the help of her family. She spoke rapidly in Korean, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Maya listened carefully, then translated for the gathered crowd. "She says I kept my promise. She says kindness really does speak every language, and she wants me to have something that belonged to her grandmother in Korea." Mrs. Park pressed a small, intricately carved wooden box into Maya's hands. Inside lay a delicate jade pendant on a simple gold chain. "She says it's for courage," Maya translated, her own voice thick with emotion. "To remember that brave hearts can change the world." As Mrs. Park fastened the necklace around Maya's neck, cameras captured the moment that would become iconic. The image of a 12-year-old black girl receiving a blessing from an elderly Korean grandmother would appear on magazine covers and inspire countless children worldwide. The afternoon dissolved into a blur of interviews and photographs. Local news stations broadcast live from the Kennedy Center. Social media hashtags #MayaJohnson and #KindnessHasNoAccent began trending nationally. But as the sun set over Washington, D.C., Maya found herself in a quiet moment with her parents outside the hotel. The chaos had settled. The cameras had gone home. It was just the three of them and the weight of how much their lives had just changed. "You know what this means, baby girl?" her daddy said, pulling her close. "What, Daddy?" "It means every child who sounds different, who looks different, who comes from different. They're going to see you up there and know they can make it too." Maya fingered the jade pendant Mrs. Park had given her. Tomorrow she will wake up as America's youngest linguistic champion. Tomorrow she would sit on national television and represent every underestimated child in the country. But tonight, she was still just Maya Johnson from Alabama. Still the girl who learned languages from library books and YouTube videos. Still the daughter of a nurse and a janitor who worked double shifts to give her opportunities they'd never had. The difference was that now the world knew her name. Now her voice carried weight and power and possibility. Now she could build bridges on a scale she'd never imagined. As they walked back into the hotel, Maya caught her reflection in the glass doors. The scared 11-year-old who had been humiliated in Professor Whitmore's classroom was gone. In her place stood a young woman ready to change the world, one conversation at a time. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same classroom where it all began. But everything was different now. The afternoon sunlight still streamed through those tall windows at Riverside Academy. The mahogany desks still gleamed with polish, but the energy in the room had completely transformed. 23 new international students sat in a circle, each one nervous but hopeful. They came from Syria, Korea, Somalia, Mexico, Russia, and a dozen other countries. Their English was broken, their confidence fragile, but their dreams burned bright. "Welcome to our Linguistic Bridge program," Maya said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had walked their path. At 12, she was officially the youngest peer mentor in the school's history. "I know how you feel right now," she continued, switching seamlessly between languages to make sure everyone understood. "Lost, different, like maybe you don't belong here." The students nodded, recognition flickering in their eyes. "A year ago, I sat in this exact room while a professor told me my voice wasn't good enough for academic discussion." Maya's smile held both pain and triumph. Today, that same professor is helping fund scholarship programs for kids just like us. Professor Whitmore entered the classroom carrying coffee and cookies for the students. His transformation remained the most remarkable part of Maya's story. He now volunteered 3 hours every week teaching advanced linguistics to immigrant students. "Miss Johnson is being modest," he said, setting down the refreshments. She's revolutionized how we think about language education nationwide. It was true. The Maya Johnson Initiative had already awarded full scholarships to 47 students across 15 states. Her Georgetown Fellowship had led to research partnerships with major universities. The Today Show interview had sparked a national conversation about linguistic bias in schools. But Maya's proudest achievement sat right in front of her. Amara, the Syrian girl who had arrived scared and silent, now served as student translator for new Arabic speakers. Mrs. Park's grandson taught Korean phrases during lunch. Jessica and Hannah, Maya's former friends who had abandoned her during the difficult months, now co-led the Cultural Exchange Club. The most important thing I learned, Maya told her students, is that being different isn't a weakness, it's your superpower. She pulled out a familiar object, the worn notebook she'd carried that first day in Professor Whitmore's class. Its pages now held notes in dozens of languages, sketches of cultural bridges, and dreams written in every script imaginable. "This notebook used to make me feel small," Maya said. "Now it reminds me that every voice matters, every accent carries wisdom, every language builds bridges." Miss Rodriguez watched from the doorway, tears of pride streaming down her face. Next to her stood Maya's parents, still adjusting to their daughter's newfound fame but bursting with joy at the young woman she'd become. "I want you all to make me a promise," Maya continued, addressing not just the students in the room, but speaking to every child watching online through the program's live stream. "Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel ashamed of how you sound. Promise me you'll use your voice to lift others up. Promise me you'll build bridges instead of walls." The students nodded solemnously, understanding they were part of something bigger than themselves. Maya's phone buzzed with a familiar notification. Another video had gone viral, this time showing a young Latina girl in Texas standing up to classroom bullies by speaking 5 languages fluently. The girl's bio read, "Inspired by Maya Johnson." Similar stories arrived daily. A Korean boy in California who started a multilingual poetry club. Twin sisters in Florida who created an app teaching refugee children English through their native languages. Dozens of young voices finding courage in Maya's example. "You know what I've learned?" Maya said, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had traveled from shame to triumph. "The world doesn't need us to sound the same. It needs us to sound like ourselves, but louder." She stood at the window where she'd once felt so small and different. Now she saw possibility stretching beyond the horizon. Every accent is beautiful. Every language is valuable. Every child deserves to be heard. Maya turned back to her students, her jade pendant catching the afternoon light. Mrs. Park's reminder that brave hearts change the world. So speak up, speak out, speak proud, because your voice might be exactly what the world needs to hear. Outside, the school bell rang, but Maya's message would ring much longer, carried forward by every child brave enough to let their authentic voice be heard. Intelligence has no accent. It just takes courage to speak.
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.